Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video blog for the 8th of June, 2016. Luckily, not a lot going on out there as things begin to calm down. One area of disturbed weather here on the west part of the tip of Cuba, almost in the Yucatan Channel. If we look at a visible satellite loop of that area, you can see there's not much to it. Weak surface trough in the area. Overall, the upper level winds just aren't very favorable, so it probably won't develop much according to the Hurricane Center. Only has a 10% chance over the next 2 to 5 days or so. Here it is right in here. Just a weak surface low maybe. You can see the front sitting in here. Lots of strong upper level winds still prevalent through the region, and so this has little chance of doing much more than providing a few squalls, showers and thunderstorms for portions of the Keys and maybe the southern part of the peninsula of Florida. You can also see the leftovers now of what was once Tropical Depression 1E in the Eastern Pacific. That's what the E stands for. TD number 1 there. All but dissipated now over the coast of southeast Mexico here at the north part of the Gulf of Tehuantepec. And you don't see any other areas out here as suspect areas. And that's interesting because normally during this 10 days of the hurricane season, this region is fairly quick to produce activity over the past 100 years or so. These are all of the points of origin, and you can see there's quite a few in there. And we've had a grand total of 0 tropical storms or hurricanes in the Eastern Pacific so far, and their season began on May the 15th. So that's just something to take note. Whereas in the Atlantic Basin, things have been a little busier. We've had Bonnie and most recently Colin. But neither of those developed out here in the open tropical Atlantic. Had they done so and made their way all the way across, for example, yeah, that would have been a pretty bad sign for the rest of the season, I believe, that the deep tropics become that busy this early. Well, that wasn't the case, and so I don't think there's too much that can be read into that. However, the sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic Basin in that region are very warm compared to where they should be. Yeah, it's pretty cold up here in the subtropics, but boy, the northwest Atlantic quite a bit warmer than it should be, as well as the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. So we are loading up the area with energy, that's for sure. Even right off the Iberian Peninsula, things are starting to warm up a little bit, despite this cold pool sitting up here that has not made its way down along the west coast of Africa via the Canary Current, and it has not mixed in the main development region either. So interesting. We'll have to see how that plays in. And of course, you can see the developing La Nina. It's not considered La Nina yet, technically, but this cold anomaly showing up in the equatorial Pacific is a sign that things are changing, and that'll affect global weather patterns, certainly the hurricane seasons for both basins. The Pacific will probably be a little bit less active than we've seen recently, and the Atlantic, the result should be that it's a little bit busier, maybe substantially busier than we've seen in the last few years. And boy, the subsurface chart tells the story as well. Very cold anomalies almost at the surface, and at the surface along a good deal of the tropics here from about 160 degrees longitude and points east from there. East is on the right-hand side of the map. And then you go down a couple hundred meters, and the water is just very cold compared to where it should be. Some of these negative anomalies at 4 to 5 degrees Celsius. So the La Nina is definitely getting set up. Actual sea surface temperatures now, just taking a look at the analysis, most of the Gulf of Mexico pretty warm, 26, 27, 28 degrees Celsius. Basically that's the low 80s, so if you need to get into the water and do any boating, swimming, fishing, scuba diving, etc., snorkeling, water skiing, or just laying out at the beach, it's very nice out there for sure along the Gulf. Very warm and a little bit warmer than it should be, as I mentioned earlier. In the Atlantic side of things, yeah, water temperatures just about at 26 degrees Celsius all the way up to the coast. Another couple of days and they will probably be there. The mid-Atlantic states still warming up, and of course up here in the Gulf of Maine, quite cold. We don't really worry about this until later in the hurricane season. I did notice on one of the message boards today that information coming out from the ECMWF, the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, their climate model, the seasonal forecast for hurricane activity, indicating higher amounts of activity than it was showing in May. What does that mean? Well, according to that pretty highly regarded model, and certainly the Euro, the ECMWF suite of products, many of them which cost quite a bit of money to subscribe to, and so we rely on meteorologists that work for big companies that do subscribe to it to sort of tell us that information secondhand, definitely indicating that the rest of the season could be busier than average. So it's going to be interesting to see once we get to August and September and the first part of October, the meat of the hurricane season, how things play out. So maybe that's just a little bit of an extra hint that you might want to prepare if you were thinking before that, I'm going to think that things are going to be not so busy. Well, there's some indications there from like I said, this is not a human forecast. This is the model taking into account all this information, sea surface temperatures, whatever the current conditions are, I'm assuming from May, and then spitting out its forecast for June, July, August, and beyond. If I'm understanding it correctly, I don't get to see the actual output. Again, that's saved for much larger companies than ours that can afford the sometimes six figures that it costs to access some of this data, this high-resolution data. But it is indicating a busier hurricane season than the May forecast was showing, for example, and even busier than that from its April forecast. So just something to keep in mind. All right, well, that's it from me for today. Have a good rest of your Wednesday. Thanks, as always, for tuning in. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. That's my website. And, of course, for Hurricane Pro and HD, I'll talk to you again tomorrow.